This video is sponsored by The Ridge. The Ridge is an awesome company that makes excellent bags, pocket knives, power banks, charging cables, phone cases, and my favorite, slim wallets. These wallets help me be more minimal and carry around less stuff, but they also allow me to carry everything that I need. It totally beats carrying around a bulky trifold like I used to. These wallets are very well made. They're super solid. They come in aluminum, carbon fiber, and titanium options, along with a bunch of different styles and colors. You can check out these and all of the other awesome products that The Ridge has to offer by using the link below, and you can get 10% off your order today with free worldwide shipping by going to ridge.com/EasyT. That's ridge.com/EasyT and use code EasyT at checkout. October 2014, that was 5 years ago. Well, 5 years ago as of this video at least, which as we know in the tech world is a pretty long time. Google, along with Motorola Mobility, which Google had acquired a few years prior, unveiled the Nexus 6, an absolute beast of a phone starting at $649, which is a little over $700 in today's money. But yeah, it was kind of a monster. Seriously, in terms of height and weight, it wasn't really anything too crazy. Of course, the Note 4 and iPhone 6 Plus were quite large as well, but the Nexus 6 measured 3.27 inches wide, which is a decent amount wider than pretty much every other top-tier flagship we got at the time. So its codename, Shamu, was all the more fitting, and it was pretty clear that Google was looking to tap into the market of phablets. Now, the Nexus 6's design was familiar. It was really familiar. In fact, it was basically just a better, oversized second generation Moto X, and that worked. The phone was comfortable and easy to hang on to, albeit a two-hander for most. It had a plastic back, but that was accompanied by a very nice metal band around the edges. It would get that really nice cold feel. There's a micro USB charging port on the bottom. Yes, it had a headphone jack, it was up top, a nicely textured power button. It had that signature circular indentation on the back with the Motorola logo sitting inside. I remember we used to call this the dimple. It also had a pretty neat dual LED ring flash implementation right around the rear lens, which was quite unique. Overall, it was a huge yet clean looking and premium device. The screen was great too. Yeah, okay, I know what you're thinking. My gosh, those bezels. Yeah, they're huge, and they made for a 74.1% screen to body ratio. Sure, we laugh at that nowadays. Obviously, today's standards are pretty high, and I cannot imagine just how much people would go on about how the forehead is bigger than the chin. But 5 years ago, at least from what I remember, the bezels weren't really that much of an issue, especially since the phone had stereo front-firing speakers. But back to the display. We're looking at a 5.96-inch 2560 by 1440 AMOLED display with the good old 16:9 aspect ratio, 493 pixels per inch, and Gorilla Glass 3 protection to top it off. It was easily one of the better panels in a smartphone in 2014, right up there with the Note 4s, and even looking at it right here, right now, it's still a very good looking, crisp, clean, and colorful display. Now, since we're on the topic of specs, let's go ahead and get the rest of them out of the way. The Nexus 6 came packed with Qualcomm's Snapdragon 805 CPU, Adreno 420 GPU, 3 gigs of RAM, and either 32 or 64 gigs of unexpandable storage. It came with a 3220 mAh battery, and while it wasn't given an official IP rating, the Nexus 6 was in fact listed as water resistant. The phone launched with Android 5.0 Lollipop and the introduction of material design. Man, what a time. Okay, so what is it like using the Nexus 6 in 2019? Well, as usual, I popped my SIM card in and I used it as my main phone for a long weekend. The very first thing that I noticed was that the vibration motor is absolutely awful, so I turned that off right away. Of course, I'm very impressed with the display and how sharp, clean, and colorful it is. It's not very bright, but it's still nice nonetheless. The speakers are pretty impressive as well with how loud they can get, and surprisingly enough, they can kind of hold their own against today's smartphone speakers, although I'd never really pick them in a head-to-head battle. In terms of overall performance, this particular Nexus 6 handled things fairly decently, and I will say that results were better than expected. This monster just kinda chugs along as best as it can, and it gets the job done for simple stuff. But he's definitely seen better days. He tries his best to keep up with heavy app usage and multitasking. Alas, he begins to slow down considerably, overheat, and lose battery at a somewhat alarming rate. And no, I don't know why I started referring to this phone as he, as if it were an elderly dog. What the heck? Anyway, so having just mentioned battery life, let's go ahead and talk about that for a sec. Battery life wasn't great in my revisit usage. There was no way that I was going to make it through a full day on a single charge, but that's to be expected from a 5-year-old phone. But from what I do remember, the Nexus 6 didn't have great battery life from the jump. If any of you remember, this was one of the younger Quad HD phones at the time, so the combination of large QHD phones with good battery life wasn't really a widespread thing just yet. Android Lollipop's efficiency improvements and the OLED display did what they could, but battery life would still deplete faster than most would like. But hey, remember turbocharge? Yeah, the Nexus 6 had that, and it came with wireless charging. As finicky as it was still present. So let's quickly talk cameras. In 2014, it was hands down the iPhone and Galaxy line of phones that were battling it out for who had the best camera in a smartphone, and in that era, Google was always playing catch up, trying its best to at least come out with something better than the previous year. The Nexus 6's cameras were easily better than the Nexus 5's, but unfortunately that wasn't enough because again, iPhone and Galaxy cameras existed. Don't get me wrong, the cameras were not trash or anything like that. They were still really good overall. In fact, just take a look at some of these quick samples. They're solid, right? Again, a nice improvement over the year prior. We were able to see the sort of growth, literally and figuratively, that the Nexus phones went through. But of course, looking back from right now, up until the Pixel phones burst onto the scene, phones from Google and friends hadn't exactly disrupted the smartphone camera category just yet. So, you knew the question was coming. Would it be a good idea to use the Nexus 6 in 2019 moving into 2020? Is this phone still worth it? As a daily driver, as is, probably not. You can pick up a Nexus 6 for a good amount under $100 as of this video if you do some hunting around online. And here's the thing, I know a lot of you are saying, why is this even a question? Well, hear me out. I'm sure there are a handful of people watching this video that are still using this as their main phone, believe it or not. And if you're one of those people, please stand and be recognized. You guys can also back me up on this too. What you can do, if you're looking for a really inexpensive phone to hold you over until a new wave of smartphones comes out, or you want a device to tinker with, or you just want to own a piece of Nexus history, go ahead and pick one up online. But I'd highly recommend doing so with the intent to flash a custom ROM, a custom kernel, replace the battery, something to breathe new life into it and make getting one much more worth it. My time with the Nexus 6 was fun, and it surprised me in a couple ways. And of course, I'm happy to be putting my SIM back into my much younger OnePlus 7T. Now, I never got the chance to own a Nexus 6 back in 2014. I mainly stuck to the Galaxy S5 and the Note 4, which in my opinion were better options back then as well. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, the Nexus 6 seems to be one of the more forgotten or less talked about Nexus phones. Like, it doesn't seem to be one of the more memorable in the bunch. After all, it really was just a much larger Moto X, but it's a Nexus nonetheless. And I know that there are a lot of people that remember using this phone years ago and still love it to this day. It's a member of the family. A family I absolutely love, and I can't wait to continue sharing these revisits with you guys. I hope you enjoyed. Leave a like if you did. Subscribe if you're new. It's been Zach, and thank you so much for watching.